Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to Creative Studio Live. In this episode, we're talking all about getting the best performances in the studio, whether it's a mobile studio, a home studio, or even a pro studio. Now, as always, it wouldn't be Creative Studio Live without welcoming my buddy, Mike from Creative Source. Mike, how are you doing this evening, this morning, this afternoon?
I'm doing very, very well. I'm just pumped about today's show, actually, Pete. Very, very excited about this one. I think it's a great subject matter, and we've got a very awesome guest as well.
We do have an awesome guest, and we're going to keep him waiting for 5 seconds while you tell us what's been happening in the world of Creative Source in the last week.
It's been a good week for me because I made a video that I've been intending to make ever since I started the channel, in actual fact, but I didn't know how to approach it. And that's about the C word, and that C word is compression, of course.
Ooh.
So, and I if I may waffle just for a second, it's a video which I wanted to make because I feel that people are so often confused by compression. I thought, how can I make this so that just anybody could understand it, like my mum could understand it? And I had a good go at that. And so far, so good. I've had some nice feedback from people saying that they'd never understood it before, and now they can. So if you're confused about compression, then please go to my channel and have a look at that video. That would be great.
There you go. You can go to the description, check out Mike's channel. And look, it's no surprise because we put his face in the thumbnail, but we would like to welcome all the way from Nashville, Tennessee, Mr. Lij Shaw. There he is from Recording Studio Rockstars. How are you doing this morning for you over there, Lij?
I'm doing great. Hold on. Let me run in. I feel like a football game. I'm supposed to
Yep. That's it.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, here he is, Lidge. Now,
I hope I didn't blow up anybody's speakers there.
yeah, that probably did, but that's okay. That's what we do here. So, so for those who don't know you and who doesn't know Lidge, but studio owner, award-winning producer, mix engineer, and 200 plus episodes of your podcast now, Lidge. Is that right? That can't be right.
Yeah. In fact, we're about to cross 1 million downloads for the show. So
Holy.
I'm excited about that. I'm actually afraid I'm going to miss it in that moment.
that is insane. So yes, Recording Studio Rockstars. If you are not aware of Lidge and his work, check out the link in the description below. Head over to Recording Studio Rockstars. Lidge, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on here because we're talking about a topic tonight that is close to my heart, and I know that you must have recorded literally thousands of people in studio environments, in all sorts of studio, Haybale Studios, pro studios, home studios. So we're talking about getting the best performances out of yourself and other people in the studio. So if you're new to this show, what we like to do is I'll be your host, and Mike and Lidge are going to do all the work. We're going to be going through. They're going to have 5 tips or insights or pieces of information or advice each, and we're going to alternate between the two of them. And because Lidge is our guest here tonight, we are going to start with you. So why don't you kick us off? When you are recording yourself or others in the studio environment, how do we get the best performances?
Well, first off, let me just say thanks so much to both you, Pete, and Mike for having me on the show. Awesome to hang with you guys. And a shout out to all of you who are joining us, Creative Sauce, Typo, Tank On, Kevin, and Paul. And Creative Sauce is you, Mike, so I just get so hi to you twice. But yeah, I mean, it's such a great topic. And I have been fortunate to record a lot of musicians and a lot of bands. I know some people have come to this topic from the context of recording yourself in your home studio. A lot of my experience partly is that, but a lot of it is working with another band or an artist in the studio and just trying to think of the best ways to give them a really, transparent, amazing experience and really capture the best performance out of them. And one of the places that I've done that has been the Bonnaroo Haybale Studio, where we've done hundreds of bands over the years, and well over 1,000 songs recorded, mixed, and mastered in our studio down there, all of which happens very quickly. But the first tip I wanted to share is the tip of pre-production. So you're probably all familiar with that term, and it basically just means getting ready and preparing yourself before you hit the studio. If you're working with a band, it can mean getting together with the band. You're not even in the studio. This is like just meet in the rehearsal space. Take the time to go through all the songs, have the band send you all the songs that you're going to record so you can listen to them, so that you can get familiar with them, so that as an engineer or a producer, what the genre is, what the style is. You have like a feeling for the music. One of the cool things you can do if you're trying to better understand what that band's vision for the music is you can ask the difficult question, which is, how do you picture this music sounding? But that's always a hard one. That's like saying, what kind of music do you play? And then people are like, oh God, I hate that question.
What's your genre?
Yeah. So, but one good tip that I've learned a lot on the podcast by, the many guests that have come on is you can ask them to make a playlist for you on Spotify, for example. And you say, make a playlist that if your band was included in it, you'd feel great about it, And that's sort of like takes the burden off the band to describe themselves and just says, what kind of music do you like? So that can help. And then that helps you understand the music a little bit. But then when you hit the pre-production space, you're rehearsing with the band, go in and just listen. And without the pressure of having to press record, this is, if in the context of production too. So it depends on whether you're the engineer only or whether you're the producer only. But if you are producing and you have this opportunity, go in, listen to the band perform, give feedback on the songs that stand out to you the most. You probably hear lots of things. If you're really sort of creative mindset, you probably hear a lot of stuff that you may want to be complimentary of or critical of. And one of the things I've learned about being critical of things is rather than jumping in and going, sounding critical, talk about how you notice details in the music, something that's maybe not working so well or a part that's clashing, and point at, be specific, point out the ways in which those two parts are going together to your ear and how maybe it's a missed opportunity for the song, because maybe if everybody was working together right there, it would really add more impact to that section of the song, for example.
I love all of that, and I'm glad that we're recording this because I should be taking notes, but that would be really distracting. So I'm not going to be taking notes, but I got some really cool things out of that. I love the playlist idea, and I'm going to do that for myself because I don't even know what I'm going to record sometimes. But yeah, I love that vision of just saying, what does the song need, or what can you add to the song? So it's not about negativity; it's about positivity around what you can do and to improve and to grow on that. So that is awesome. Mike, as we always say, you go second, and you got a hard act to follow there. So,
it is a hard act to follow. And I also want to say that you guys didn't tell me that I had to shave my head and grow a beard for this episode as well. So, I mean, next time.
Lidge is chasing me. Like, he used to have an epic beard, and then he's getting shorter and shorter until eventually, like, we're both going to be clean. I said we're going to both look like Moby eventually. We're just going to be like bald head and clean shaven. So that's what we're going for.
So thanks, Lidge, for that. That was very interesting, and I should be rewatching this myself to pick up these tips. Look, in today's show, I'm going to be going a little bit more from the angle of someone recording in their home and where they are the producer, they're the writer, they're the performer, they're the whole lot. They're the janitor, the coffee maker, the whole thing. However, for my first point, I'm not doing that. So mostly for me, I am working at home, recording my own music in my studio, like a lot of our viewers. But some years ago, I was involved in making a TV show here in Perth about songwriters, and we would record them performing. And these were often very young folks, and often performing for the first time in front of people. And we would film a whole bunch of them and then choose some of the best ones and televise it. And I was the host and the producer of that show, and it really challenged some of my people skills. And what I learned after a while is these people need me to feel that I'm their ally, that I'm completely on their side and completely want them to look fantastic or sound fantastic. And there's several things to overcome in that. First of all, they're looking at you as Mr. Experience, and they're imagining that you've worked with all these amazing artists, and they've come along and you're probably looking down on them and thinking that they're no good because they don't know how to sing into a microphone, or, all of these sort of basic things that we take for granted. And I think it's really important, without patronizing people, to have them know, hey, look, it's okay if you don't understand how to use the microphone, if you're not that experienced with it. We were all there once. Hey, I remember when I started. Give them some anecdotal story or whatever. Make them feel at home and make them feel that you understand what it's like to be an artist under pressure. And I just feel that this plays into their psychology quite a lot. And there's a big difference when you're performing to a person, because, you know, even in the studio situation, they're performing to you. That person kind of loves you in a way, that they really want to hear what you've got to do, and they think you're awesome, and, you know, they want to hear what you're going to do next, sort of thing. I think that's in a different position as a performer, as opposed to a position where you're trying to prove yourself to someone. So, you know, and to keep my point short, I would say,
don't do that.
Yeah.
No. I'd like to. I've been to being 50 something. I go to the doctor a lot more.
Me too.
and I've noticed that my relationship with my doctor is a really important relationship to me. I want to feel that he or she is listening to me, that they hear my concerns, that they act upon them with me, in cooperation with me. Now, they may be a really rubbish medical doctor. I wouldn't know how to assess them as a medical doctor, but if they seem like they listen to me and that they take on my concerns, then I feel the relationship's good, and I feel like they're doing a good job. So if you want I would only suggest, from my perspective, that if you do have paying clients and you want them to come back again, then be a good doctor, you know, make them feel like you actually care about what they're doing. So, yeah.
Can I comment on that real quick?
Yeah,
so a couple of quick takeaways. One is, you talked about the you know, making them feel comfortable, like you've got their best interests, and because they're looking to you like the expert. The other thing happens sometimes too, where they begin to doubt themselves, and they just, it's like when you go to the dentist, you're just like, tell me what you want me to do. Do I hold my mouth open too much, too little? Do I go to the left, go to the right? You know, just tell me what to do. And sometimes you just want the band to trust themselves more, and not forget who they are. You know, if something sounds crappy in the headphones, say so. You know, trust yourself. And then the other thought, the other thought was just a reminder that music is communication between humans, plain and simple.
Absolutely.
So, like, you know, the being able to create your music and perform it to somebody who's listening and who cares. So that's a great reminder, Mike.
That is really good, and too many good points here. And yeah, by the way, this is about usually a 30-minute show, but we're going to go long tonight, just in case anyone needs to, you know, move on and do something else. We'll be here for a while tonight. But the other thing I'll say is,
if you do need to take a bathroom break at all, look at the screen. If I'm talking, you're safe to go.
You've got at least 10 minutes. You're fine. The other thing is, if you walk into a studio and someone's about to record you and they pull a rubber glove on like that, then you've probably got some problems coming up. So don't confuse your doctor with your audio engineer, because it could end really badly. Thank you for all those that are here live, by the way. We've got folks here that are here live. If you've got any questions for Mike or for Lidge, or you've got your own comments or your own queries, then throw them out here. Mr. Kevin Jones says, is there any way to listen to this afterwards? We've had a bad storm about to lose power. So yes, so the replay will be available if you're here live, or if you're not here live, or if you're watching on the replay. Welcome. If you've got any questions, throw those down in the comments. I will ensure that Mike and Lidge both go there, and we'll all have a good chat in the comments afterwards, after the show. But let's move on here to point number 2. We're going to throw down, we've got a bit of a Brady Bunch thing going on here. We're going to throw down to Lidge, and let's go with your second tip for getting the best performance out of you and others in the studio.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, I pulled that off pretty well. So second tip is still about being prepared. You know, of course, everything in this topic is about being prepared, because once the performance happens, it's too late. You either got it or you didn't, you know. But setting up for your session. So if you're the engineer, even if you're the producer, is looking for an opportunity to set up for the session in advance. Get all your microphones set up. Make sure your headphone boxes are ready to go. Make sure you went out and checked phase relationship between the different mics, polarity, and things like that. Get as much done as you can so that everything's working, so that the moment the band comes and settles in and they start playing music right away, you're like this close to being able to capture them. If you can just be ready right off the bat, that was some of the advice I heard from Al Schmidt, actually through his assistant, through Steve Genowick. But it was the point that Al's always ready to go. Like, they're capturing the first take the band performs. So being ready to rock out with the band, where you don't miss that initial thing. In my world, a lot of times there's still some sound checking that needs to happen because you got a drummer that comes in and plays different from the intern who helped you sound check. So you need to take a little bit of time with each instrument, but just try and be really, really ready. The other one is remember to check the headphones. So go out there yourself, put on the headphones, listen to it with your critical engineer, producer ear, and you decide if it sounds amazing. Because if it doesn't, it's going to be tough for you to get a good performance. And again, to Mike's point, Mike, that was, the band may not know to tell you that the headphones sound like crap.
Yeah, right. Yep.
That's totally true. And I think I probably listened to that podcast where you were talking about that. But yeah, it's such a good point because like that's it, being prepared. And even if you're recording yourself, like I find that I do that here in the studio. I'll basically pretend that I'm the engineer and the talent. So I'll just like set everything up and go, okay, Pete, you ready, Pete? Yeah, I'm good, Pete. And then you sit there and then you hit record. You're like, oh, that bloody engineer, he didn't set up these the microphones all wrong and the headphone mix is all wrong. I've got to fire that guy. And then I realize it's me. So we move on. Great points. Mike, what do you have to add to that or to shift gears?
You've been reading my notes again, Mr. John. But this you've led perfectly. You've segued perfectly into my point. And yeah, so I'm really going to get into the home recording thing now because there's a massive issue that we face. And it's great we've got all this technology, affordable technology now. We don't have to pay people to go to their studio and we're all by ourselves at home, and that's wonderful. But there's several issues with it. And so a typical scenario for me would be if I'm recording an acoustic guitar. So I've got to set that microphone up, I've got to adjust, getting the levels, getting the position of the mic. Now, it's a bit weird to position a mic when you're playing the instrument and setting the position of the mic at the same time, right? It's a really difficult thing to do. It's a lot of hit and miss. Some experience helps you out, especially as you get to know your own guitar and your own instrument, so you get to know kind of good positions. But there's still a lot of hit and miss involved. And then you get down, you sit down, you get your headphones on, whole thing's going, and you need a bathroom break, and you get up and you go and you come back and you've changed positions slightly. And there's all of these sort of hassles involved. So look, this is not about sort of giving up and just going, oh, screw this, just go to a studio. This is about just understanding those limitations and trying to mitigate them as much as you can. And so I've got sort of 3 little mini tips under that heading. So the first of all is leave things set up when you can. So you don't really want to be setting up mic stands and all that all the time. I mean, it sort of really kills the creative juices to be plugging in cables and things when you're the artist as well. So if you can, if your house can accommodate it, then leave some things set up. Another thing that I like to do is kind of separate that role of engineer and artist a bit. So if I really want to make a really good start to a performance, I'll set up the night before, have it all going, and then kind of get up in the morning and then sit down as an artist and sort of hit record and go for it, So that's one of the things I like to do. And the other thing is this technology that you can take hold of. My very first YouTube video 11 months ago was about an app on my phone to control my DAW. It's just things like that. It's invaluable to be able to continue to sit in the position you're in with the instrument and the mic and everything, and just control the have the transport controls at your fingertips. So there's different ways of solving it, but it's really important to think about that because it's against you, to be honest with you. This part of home recording is really against you. And there's been many, many times when I've felt that my performance was completely and utterly killed. That's my excuse anyway, by the fact that I had the engineer, the janitor, and the tea lady as well.
It makes me think of a great name for a new podcast channel. It's called Man versus Studio. Although it should be like, human versus studio.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the tools that are available now to make it easy to do things like you said, like having a remote control. I take a laptop around and I use a screen share and I can control myself from any part of the studio. That stuff was like dream magic.
Absolutely.
When I was first making records.
just to tip to another one of my videos, because I've got an interface, the Presonus Studio 192. I know you've got one as well, Lidge, actually, and that's very cool because you can actually control with an iPad the actual gain controls on the interface as well, which is just heaven sent to me when I got that. So, if you've got a home studio, then make use of that kind of technology as much as you can afford.
Love it. Very good. I love that Mike got halfway through his point and then he said, now I've got 3 points. I'm like, I was about to cut you off and finish you. I thought that was your point. And then you just continued on. You should be. I'll just pause here because it's an interesting point you brought up there. Now, Lidge, I know you've been recording your own music probably in the last sort of few months as well. So when you are an engineer and you've got a lot of experience recording other people, when you start recording yourself, what are the big differences? Like, what were some of the aha moments you had when you got into the studio as the talent, as the artist? What did you learn from that?
I'll tell you, one of the big things for me was realizing that my vision for how good I was and how good my music was didn't quite match the talent of these high-level musicians that I had hired to come play bass and drums with me. So that became apparent early on. I was like, oh man, I really gotta do some shedding. You know, I gotta do some rehearsing and make sure that I'm prepared. So I went and just took time out to just go play my songs. 5 songs was all I was going to do. And I knew 95% of the lyrics, you know, and arrangement and the way I was going to play them. But there was still that stuff that you just don't know until you're playing with the musicians. But I rehearsed those songs over and over and over again so that I could sing them and I could perform them, because I knew that if I was playing them poorly, the band is like, you know, I don't know if I can swear on this, but they're you know, blank out of luck. They're beep out of luck. So, you know, I made sure that I was ready in that respect. The other big takeaway for me was it like hyper validated the value of a producer and an engineer, because I realized that here I was playing all this stuff and I got so frustrated. And I had to be careful because there's a natural creative frustration that comes out. That's part of the process, but don't project that on the musicians who are doing they might be doing a fantastic job. But as a creative, you can't even focus on that because you're so focused on like beating up the music and making sure it's as great as you want it to be or whatever, you know? And it was like, I was so focused on that stuff that I missed things that seemed so obvious to me. And I thought, man, if I was just producing or engineering, I would have picked up on that detail right there so quickly. I would have helped guide everybody and make sure everybody knew what everybody else was playing right there, so that it was like, so that there was, you know, it all glued together just right. So that was the thing. It was, you know, there was wearing a lot of hats like that, being the musician, the songwriter, the singer, the guitar player, and the engineer and the producer, and also trying to have an intern help me and being a teacher at the same time to, like, you know, teach the intern, here's how you run Pro Tools. It was more than I really needed to take on at once.
Sounds like a pretty good learning experience then. And no, thank you. I wanted to ask that because I'm like, I know you're probably getting some learnings there, and there would have been some frustrations and some things you got out of that for sure. We will move on. Like I said, we're going to run late. So yes, if anyone has anywhere to be, go have your comfort. We talked about a comfort stop. That must be an Australian thing, Lidge. If anyone needs a comfort stop, or go make yourself a cuppa, then go do that. But let's jump into point number 3 and your third tip here, Lidge. And your third tip for getting your best performance out of you and others in the studio
is transparency. That's supposed to be true. That's supposed to be a piece of glass, a window there. Transparency in the studio. So like, as the engineer, as the producer, and as Mike said, even if you're engineering and producing yourself, make that process and the technical stuff as transparent as possible so that you're not thinking about it when you're performing. I didn't even write this one down, but it just popped in my head. I'm going to start with it. The talk back mic. If you're the engineer and you're communicating with the band, you need to understand that that can be very powerful because you can share information, but it's even more so in a far way disruptive. So the things that are going on inside a musician's mind in that moment when they're trying to be focused on the very first note that comes out of a performance, you know, the first note of the first syllable of the first word is critical in a song. And it takes a great deal of concentration and focus just to get there. Or even sort of getting to that point where you're almost distracted and you're no longer thinking about trying to nail it. And so when you talk to the band and you go like, okay, cool. Are you guys ready to roll one now? You just blew the vibe. You just killed it. Like all of a sudden now this person who's about to perform, now they're thinking about communicating with you, and now they have to go back. Now, maybe that's me a little bit, and I'm a little, I don't know, dyslexic or like HDD or, easily distracted. But I also take that as an opportunity to sort of like hyper analyze and figure out the best way to do this. If I struggle with it, then there's a chance that somebody else struggles with it. And so therefore I want to be attentive to that. So don't talk too much on the talk back, be absolutely minimal and let it be just about the music. Things like click track, make sure that you are very, very careful about whether you do or don't use a click track in a song. Make sure that you're using it or not using it for all the right reasons. Make sure that when you find the click track tempo, you're not throwing a monkey wrench into the gears of the band performance, don't ever, good Lord, please don't ever play somebody the wrong click track tempo. Play them only the right one. And that means you need to learn the skill of tapping out the tempo and finding a perfect match to what the band's performing without even hearing the click, just watching it yourself until you're confident this is 100% right. And then you introduce it to the band and then they go, oh, wow, that's perfect. And they just, it builds their confidence. Headphones, making sure the headphones are perfect again, or deciding ahead of time that this should be a performance where there are no headphones. So the transparency could mean the band knows how to perform this in the room naturally. Don't stick them in headphones. Don't put them in a strange alien space where everything sounds different and it throws them off. And then the last one is line of sight. So, hi, Pete. Hi, Mike. I finally figured this out. I have to do the opposite of what's on the screen.
Right. You have to look down there.
But it's making sure that everybody can see everybody else in the band. It's making sure that little details are paid attention to. So for example, when you take the drummer and the guitar player and move the guitar player away, make sure that the drummer and the other musicians can maybe see the guitar player's right hand strumming. Yeah. Don't make that hidden. All of a sudden, if they can't see that, they can't follow the cues. Make sure that everybody can see the drummer. So then the drummer goes to the end and they go like this. Everybody can land on the note together. And, that's probably good enough for now, or else we'll go for like 3 hours.
Yeah. That is good, and I think that like you could think, well, if you're not recording a whole band, how is this relevant? Well, it's super relevant because I've recorded even in this studio, like my own wife and my own daughter. When I'm recording them, it's exactly the same thing. It's the same thing as communication. It's line of sight. It's having the right vibe, and it's not interrupting. Like I've gotten serious trouble just recording people in this very room because you'll be like they'll start and they'll sing their first note. And you'll hit pause and they'll go, what? You're like, oh, yeah, I just need to change something. And yet you've completely ruined their vibe. Yeah, so as the engineer, we get all technical and we get all like nerdy on all the buttons and all the things. What you don't realize is that sometimes you just got to let them have a take. And then, you can always hit record again and record a second and a third and a fourth take. Sometimes it's better to keep keep talent happy. And then you can just, deal with that over compression or deal with that clipping signal the next take. And
what happens with practice, you learn some things you need to change while they're performing. And some things you take a little shorthand note to yourself. I'll put like, bass, and I'll put a little arrow up and I write that down in front of me so that I'm giving away my next point too, but when the band, when you stop, I look at my note, I'm like, oh yeah, turn the bass up a tiny bit. Now we go to the next take.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Excellent. Let's throw over to you, Mike, because we're almost at time. I'm going to keep going here. If everyone's got time, we're just going to keep going.
You just used my points already there. But,
well, there you go. You're done, Mike.
Awesome. I mean, I have got something to say about click tracks a little bit later, but I'll leave that till later. My next point is something that I am very, very, very guilty of, and it's an old and cliched point which is made on YouTube channels absolutely everywhere, but I'm going to make it again because it bears repeating, and that's realizing that performance trumps sonic perfection. Almost got that out. And I was actually watching, I wish I could credit the guy who made this video, but I was watching an analysis of the Queen song, We Will Rock You. You know the song, guys. I won't sing it because you'll get a copyright strike. Can you do that, Pete? I'm not even sure you
No,
can
I think
do
I just got a copyright strike right now for
so
that.
it's some homework for people in the chat. Go away and listen to that song again. And a couple of things. So if I'll remind you that it starts with a kind of, not a drum beat, but a kind of a stomp of hand claps and stomping. Then it's got Freddie Mercury singing a cappella, more or less, over that. And then Brian May comes in with the guitar at the end. And there's a couple of odd things about it. First of all, those stomps and claps, and not that perfect, right? They're all over the place. In actual fact, the levels go up and down, and the first two especially are kind of weak compared to the rest. Then Freddie sings. Now remember, he's singing without any other instruments, so we suspect that his pitch went a little off over time, because when Brian May comes in with the guitar, Freddie's actually a little bit flat compared to the guitar. Then as Brian's getting into it, his rhythm, I had actually noticed this before, his rhythm goes quite a bit off. It's noticeable that it's not really quite in time with the rhythm. Now, we know that Queen at that point had enormous amount of experience in the studio. They knew that those things were there. There's no way that they didn't hear those things, but they decided to keep it anyway because the decision would have been made that the performance was just so good. We're not going to mess with it. And it's really important. Now, I'm not saying that you should not aim for some awesome sonic qualities in your recording, but once in a while you're going to pull something off really, really good performance-wise, which isn't sonically all that great. And I urge you not to hit the delete button when you do that, but at least keep it and perhaps go back. And there's other things. The one thing I have noticed, and this is just a tiny, tiny thing, but it's talking about headphones again. For me, for years and years, I'll wear these sort of headphones when I'm recording myself, and I'm really quite comfortable to wear them, you know, and they don't bleed virtually at all. You've got the same ones as me, Pete, I see there. However, the few people that I have had come through the studio, loads of people. In fact, my partner, Susie, I record her all the time. She just loves to have one ear off like that. And at first it really bothered me. I'm like, God, you know, I'm going to get that lead of the click.
You're like, why'd I buy that other half of the headphone?
Exactly right,
I could have saved 50%.
Could have bought those half-price ones. and it sort of, and then you sort of have to go, no, going to have to let that go, because the person is more comfortable and they're going to sing. But in actual fact, I've heard it said that it can affect pitch somewhat as well to have completely enclosed headphones, and it can really send people off. So those types of things, you could definitely weigh that up, and I think we need to sort of practice what we preach a little bit more. I know I do, because I need to be reminded of this quite a lot, because it's easy when you're just trying to, especially when you're producing yourself, right? All those insecurities come out, and you want to kind of make up for your lack of talent, in my case, by an awesome production. You know, you want to just sell yourself in the best possible way, and it's very tempting to get into all of these sonic details and make everything isolate perfectly and all that. And you got to at some point let it go and just say, no, if it was good enough for Queen to be out of tune a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll make a quick comment on that. A reminder to all of us is that the wonderful take, that magic take, like Brian May's guitar solo, it's not mathematics, right? So it's not 2 + 2 = 4. That was the right answer. There is no other right answer. It's Queen and Brian May, they were going through the same things that you go through when you record your own music. They're like, they just had to simply trust themselves. That feels great. I love it. We're done. That's it. That's all the math there is in it.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, it's so true that a lot of, especially those that are in the home studio as well, like you hit record and you hit that first bum note and then you stop it. And what you don't realize is that the rest of that take may be perfect. And we're in a world where you can comp your takes. You can get one part from one part from another. I know some people don't like doing that, but like just play it through, and you never know what you're going to actually get out of it. You may get to the end and go, hey, that bum note actually works better than what I was going to try and play anyway. So yeah, like don't have to be perfection. I've always said, perfection is the enemy of great. And yeah, you can make a great song without it being perfect, because perfect is subjective and perfect is often impossible as well. We'll round out with 2 more tips from each of our gentlemen here, but I'm gonna cover Lidge's face for a moment here with a great comment here. There you go. Electric Owl works. Sometimes I route the click track to just the drummer's headphone mix if I have a live from the floor session. That way, the rest of the band is comfortably playing to the drummer as they normally do. That is a great tip. So don't put the click in everyone's ears. Don't put them in everyone's headphone mix. Send it to the drummer. Drummer keeps the beat. Everyone plays to the drummer, because you know what? Not many bands play live to a click. So they play live to a drummer. So if that's your band, if they're used to playing live to a drummer, then that sounds like a good tip to me. Lidge, have you used that before? Is that something that you would recommend?
Absolutely, and good tip, Chaz. So that was Chaz from Electric Owl Works.
There you go.
So that is an excellent tip. I do that all the time. I send click. Everybody may want some of the click in the headphones if they're playing to a click, but the drummer particularly wants the most. So I make sure that there's the biggest boost in the drummer's headphones. And sometimes it depends on where we're going with the song. But if all the parts will be replaced later, then in that context, the band is really playing just to inform the drum performance during the recording. And then the drummer probably is thinking, I really want to be on this click track. So they're probably going to want to hear a ton of click and not so much of everybody else, just enough to get, to know what the right energy is. And then everything's rebuilt. But if you're keeping a lot of the parts that are happening during the recording, then probably less, not only zoning in on the click, enough to stay in tempo, but like making sure everybody can still pay attention to the other instruments is key.
Love it. Excellent. Good tip there from Chaz, and well explained by Lidge. This is why we have all these great people on board. Let's kick into tip number 4 here. So we're going to throw back to Lidge for your number 4, down there. Number 4 tip for getting the best performances in the home studio. Studio.
This tip is just take notes. So this sort of accompanies some of the other tips, and I left off with this when we were talking about setting levels on stuff and whether you do or don't stop the take. Probably you don't stop the take, but so it's just taking notes. It's like taking notes at the beginning of the process. If you're recording yourself, making sure that you've written out your lyrics, written out your charts, organized the arrangement of the song as best you can. If you're producing, it's writing up charts for the song, for the artist, for the band, so that you maybe everybody who's playing together is all following the same structure of the song. Sometimes you hire musicians, sometimes you have to hand them a chart so they can follow it. And then the other part is just as the producer, as the engineer, it helps you know exactly what the arrangement of the song is and know, have a language to communicate with the band. And so I remember when I first started recording, I used to do things like, be like, yeah, there was a thing you did in the middle of the song, there was somewhere around the whatever, where you kind of went up and down. And I was like, you quickly realize you're like, that is really stupid. That doesn't help anybody. And when you write out a chart and you learn how to, on a piece of paper, write out what the structure of the song is, it's so much easier to say, oh, it's the, second bar, the fourth bar, and that channel after the chorus. And bear in mind, everybody in the band thinks about the song in a different context. So sometimes people think about the chart and they think about the second bar and the fourth bar. The drummer probably does more than anybody else. The guitar player is going to think about the G chord and the C chord, and the singer is going to think about the lyric.
Yeah.
And those things cross over each other. So, but it gives you like a common language for communicating with everybody. And then the other part is when the band is performing, take notes. So make sure you write down your thoughts about each performance. Write it down to yourself. I'll listen, I'll try and get in the zone. And then I hear the bass player playing a thing and I write like, bass plus kick for V1 or something like that. And then I forget about it and I go back to listening. Don't stop the take. Don't freak out. Just like make the note to yourself and then come back at the end and try and share all those notes with the band as best you can before the next performance, unless your talkback technique is going to disrupt them.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I love that, and again, every time I'm listening to you, again, I'm going to be rewatching this on the replay and taking all the notes. Then, but yeah, even translating that into yourself, and what I recommend on the channel here a lot for folks that are their own studio and their own engineer and their own talent is to record yourself and then listen back. Like you don't have to just record take after take after take. You can play back and take your own notes and then record take 2. You don't have to go take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and then listen to them all and try and comp something together. Listen to take 1, go, hey, I need to actually dial that level down, or hey, I need to change the way I play that G chord because it's not sounding right in that particular way. So I think, yeah, you can use that same advice that Lidge has just given, even when you're on your own.
And very helpful for mixing too. So instead of mixing feeling like every time you hear something, you have to address it, it's very helpful to take the mix outside of the studio, listen to it somewhere else, and actually write down a few notes, because you may find that once you've written down 3 notes or 4 notes for the song, you go in, you address just those 4 things and print it again. And now you've got the mix, whereas you might have just continued to spend ages and ages and dig deeper and deeper.
100%. Love it. All right, over to you, Mike. Point number 4 around getting the best performances.
I hate to keep talking about click tracks, but point number 4 is about click tracks. But I'm going to expand a little bit now. Obviously, we all hate click tracks, it seems, so we're going to talk about it. And I'm just going to give a few little tips about how I handle click tracks, and I've no idea if these are good practice or not. So Lidge can probably correct me if I'm just being doofus.
Start poking you from below.
That's right. Ooh, that sounds a bit wrong, Pete. Anyway, but, blush.
Go on, Mike.
The first thing I do is I use my phone. So setting the tempo of the click is I find is really important. And I used to find that when I was actually sitting in front of my DAW, I go, how fast does this song go? It's kind of like I'd listen to it the next day and think, what was I thinking with that tempo? So what I do is I record my rehearsals. I rehearse the song away from the studio, perhaps in the kitchen or wherever, and I record myself playing that song just naturally, just the way I feel it, right? And I just keep that, and I click along with that when I do the tap tempo in the DAW. I'll just listen to that recording, and I just kind of feel that gets the more natural tempo of the song for me. So that's the first thing I do. And then second, I think you do this as well, Pete, I pretty much don't use an actual click track. I usually write some kind of drum track, if you like. Although I'm not going to say really a drum track, it will be elements of the drum track. So first of all, the important things I think about, I often use a hi-hat. But it could be something like that. You could use a drum click sound or anything. But apart from the actual tempo and playing, usually we're going to be saying 4/4, is think about the divisions, because different types of divisions are going to be helpful to you. So you know, whether you're going to divide that bar to 8, 16ths, all those kinds of things, it's going to help you. I'm thinking in terms of playing as a guitarist. Often I'm laying down my first tracks in that way. Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, I'm always playing 8 beats. It might just be some of those 8 beats, which I think help me along. And look, I'm not saying you should spend an age on this, just something very, very quickly. You can copy and paste it. And you can vary that through the song. So sometimes a different type of click might be helpful in a chorus as opposed to a verse. So sometimes I'll just do a hi-hat, maybe a bass drum for the first, or kick drum, I should say, Americans present. A kick drum for the first beat. You know, anything that's sort of going to complement the actual rhythm of the song, or the rhythms in the song. I find that heaps better than playing along with a click. Some of the other advantages as well is, well, a lot of my songs at least, when they get to the last couple of bars, there is a slowdown in tempo. So being able to program those drum parts means I can either just cut it there and let one of the primary instruments dictate that slowdown in tempo, or sometimes I'll actually do the tempo graph in the DAW and actually slow down.
There's a word for it, but it's not politically correct to say.
Oh, really? Well, there you go. We'll have to find out about that. Lidge will put that in the comments below, and then YouTube will filter it out.
Just a whole bunch of things. Sometimes, don't use drums. Sometimes I'll use percussive sounds. It's really worth just spending an extra 5 or 10 minutes getting something which really complements the performance, right?
Yeah.
And if it's too loud or too overbearing, it can actually really ruin the way you play, because you tend to play against it, right? As if you're actually in a band playing against that rhythm, and if it's not right, it will bring out all the wrong things in your playing as well. So yeah.
So two thoughts about the tempo. One is a lot of the tempo ultimately is determined by the lyric. So make sure you're paying close attention to that. Too fast and you can't get all those words together. Too slow and they're sounding too stretched out and it doesn't feel right. And then what was the other one? There was another one. Oh yeah. The other one was, it doesn't have to be, you know, a tick, 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 or a hat, 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 or some like MIDI sound. Sometimes we used to take a percussion instrument and go play a little thing that feels like the song, and then you loop that.
Right.
Just loop that right out on in your DAW and play to that. And it's like, you're not even hearing something that sounds like a click track. It sounds like a rhythm part.
I love all of that, and yes, I do use similar. And one thing I'll add to that is I tend to find that for some reason I speed up in the chorus, and the chorus of the song, when you're running a singer-songwriter type song, which is the sort of stuff that I know Mike and I produce, and Lidge, you're more recent stuff as well. You have your intro, and what I'll find is that like I'll record a rehearsal, and it will be at like 80 BPM, and then by the time I get to the end of it, it'll be at 120. And what I realized is that the chorus is like 100. So I'm like, okay, that's probably my moment of truth where it sounded about right. Like you say, the 80 was too dragging because I was leading in, just sort of easing into the track. By the end of it, I'm rushing through to get to the end. So I tend to find that the chorus, if I do Mike's technique and I record a whole track, I'll go to the chorus, the first chorus, work out what that tempo is, and that tends to be my truth. But again, it's going to vary for everyone. But
can I just drop in there as well?
No,
look, you should never avoid playing along with a click track because you can't play with the click track, right? Because of poor musicianship. But some music and some songs definitely do need tempo changes through them. So one of the got to make a video about this because it's a feature in some DAWs, but one of the things I would actually do just with some songs is actually play the song through perhaps a live performance, guitar and vocal, and then you can actually set the tempo of the DAW to that. I've done it in Studio One and I've done it in Cakewalk, and some songs really deserve that. What I mean, the advantage of that is you can still do your MIDI functions, copy and paste things across, and they'll still, everything will actually sync in with that performance. It's a little time consuming, but definitely worth doing for some songs because not all songs need a steady tempo all the way.
Like it. Excellent. We're only 17 minutes past, so we'll probably wrap this up in about double the time that we had allocated.
Never.
We're never going to finish, Pete.
It'll never be. Oh God! Yeah,
you guys know, we're representing all time zones. It's just a 24/7 clock right here, like this live stream.
See, this morning for Lidge, he's got all day. I'm sitting here after midnight, so I'm going to turn into a pumpkin any moment. Let's kick into our final tip from both of these fine gentlemen. So tip number 5 and final tip from you, Lidge, around getting the best performances.
This one is the best one of all. It's just take breaks. Just have fun. Have fun in the studio. Take a break. Don't stress out over it. Push yourself to a point of, usually push yourself to the top and then go a little bit too far. Make sure you kept that take that was at the top so you can go back to it if you need. And then just take a break. I've gotten amazing performances out of artists where, I was working with Will Kimbrough once and we were working on a guitar solo and we really had to hammer it out. And it was like this brilliantly composed guitar solo. But by the time he got it, it was like it had no life to it. And then we just took a 20-minute break. We went down, we hung out in the kitchen, we talked and joked around and had coffee. And then he came up and he nailed it in a single take. And it was brilliant. And I realized after that, I was like, you know what? We couldn't have hammered through for another 45 minutes and gotten that take. We could have spent 2 more hours on it. We wouldn't have gotten that. The fastest point from point A to B, the fastest line from point A to B or path was to just simply stop working and take a break and come back and nail it in one take. Because at that point, we sort of had done our homework and we knew what it was supposed to be.
I love that point, and I'd imagine it'll be the same for mixing, for mastering, for doing everything. Is like sometimes you just get that fatigue level. I know that it's the same for me. You spend 2 hours in the studio. I go for like a 30-minute walk, like a really like fast walk around the block, and just listen to some other music or just a podcast or something. Recording Studio Rockstars podcast, of course, that always comes on my playlist. And then you get back and you go back in, and you're like, oh, suddenly everything just seems so much clearer, and you've got ideas, and you've got a clear mind, and you can go and do it again. So yes, I think taking breaks is highly underrated. And yeah, if you're pushing through in that 7-hour recording session, yeah, your stuff's not going to be sounding good by the end of that.
Now, Pete, just make sure you're looking both ways before you cross the street if you're listening to my podcast while you're walking.
Speaking of length, yeah, if I want to go for a 2.5-hour walk, I'll throw on a Recording Studio Rockstars.
Now you see how we got here, right?
All right, over to you, Mike. I shouldn't have done this. I should have switched it around for the last one so that Lidge could have finished off. We will clearly be better finished than you, but give it a crack anyway.
I think I'm going to say at this point, I'm going to make this one quick so that Lidge can get in a 6th one. I think he's got a 6 in him. I think he's got that. Just give him a little 20-minute break and he'll be.
Yeah.
So I've already got one.
So this is a little bit of a story for this one, actually. Sorry.
There you go. I'll go make a cuppa.
I came from a bit of a background of playing in bands, right? And so you were used to always playing alongside someone else. But then when you get into your sort of home studio situation, especially for those first 2 or 3 tracks, you're playing in a really artificial way. So the first track you're playing against a click track, and then perhaps you'll lay down a bass, but the bass is only against the guitar or something, or however, whatever order you decide to do it. Some people are going to do the drums first, but even if they do the drums first, right, you're not being a good Ringo Starr. I say Ringo Starr because he always played the song. Ringo Starr, he always played the song so well. So anyway, I had this technique, and I thought, well, I'll be a clever guy about this, and what I'll do is I'll just record guide tracks to begin with. So I'll lay down that first guitar and then that bass. And the attitude was always like, I'm not going to keep this. This is just so that the idea is that the final take would always be playing against something else that was already there. In other words, playing with the whole band, right? There was no tracks left that were played in isolation. And that was that. I still do that now. I lay down guide tracks. But here's the weird thing about it. Despite having that goal in mind, it's amazing how many times those guide tracks are actually better than my final performance, right? And I think that's because of the attitude, right? So the title of my last point is treat every take as if it's just a guide track. Like it's just something about going, oh yeah, this isn't really going to matter. So as long as it's basically okay, it should be fine. Yeah. And that's what for me actually ended up getting a better performance than actually playing against the whole band. So yeah, just a little idea there. People can experiment with that and see how they go with that. But
I like that, and I think that's actually gone really well full circle, because I think Lidge, you were talking about like always being ready and always being ready to hit record. And I don't know if you've found this, and maybe it's a good segue, because one thing I'm fascinated is why don't you give us a little bit? We've got negative 20 minutes here, so why don't you tell us a bit about the Haybale Studio? Because I think that's fascinating that you get bands that are coming in that just you have to set up cold, you have to record them cold, you have to get that performance out of them. I bet you've had experiences where you've just hit record and said, hey, give me a rehearsal, and then that's like a great take, and you sort of go with that, and then you sort of move on from there. What's your experience been like doing that?
It's even faster than that. So when I do the Haybale Studio, we have a festival just south of Nashville called the Bonnaroo Festival. I've been doing that for 15 years, and it's like 80,000 people at the festival and 100 plus bands playing on multiple stages for 4 days. And so I go down and I create a backstage recording studio in a trailer, and we actually surround the outside of the trailer with hay bales to soundproof the whole thing, because it's back behind these huge main stages. But it really does a wonderful job. So hay bales are a great form of studio sound isolation. If you could just like surround, make sure that you check with fire codes, but if you can surround your studio with hay bales, it's like great soundproofing. So we set up a studio in there, and then the bands come through, they get scheduled to come through. Each band is in there for 1 hour, and they walk in the door. I meet them at the door. Okay, what do you guys got? Great. This is your instrumentation. Awesome. Come on in. We'll set you all up over here and here and here. Everybody's in one room together, drums, vocals, acoustic guitars, electric guitars, bass, everything. And then I have a little control room where I step back, and it's not really soundproofed, the control room. It just gives me a little bit of stepping back from the band. But I can look through the glass at them. I put headphones on. All those sounds come through a mixing console. We've taken everything down there from my Soundcraft DC 2000 board to an SSL console to more recently, in the past few years, I've been using the PreSonus Studio Live 64 console and actually switch into a digital setup. But then I just listen, I sound check the band. They're all in headphones. They hear the same thing I hear. And as we get sound checked, it's like, all right, everybody play together, or just go to the chorus and give us where the most voices are happening. I balance it out while they're playing, and then say, okay, what's the title of the first song? Go, we're ready for you, we're rolling. Yeah. And so the mix happens live while they're performing it, while it's the first time I've heard the song. There is no sound check. There's no performance and second take or anything like that. And it's pretty amazing. So you get a lot of great performances out of the band because they're ready. They are a band that's good enough to make it to a festival and be on tour. They've taken all their content and distilled it down to their best few songs that they're pushing for radio right now. And they're coming straight from a stage and straight from a high energy environment where everybody's just like so positive about music. So it's this great convergence of all these things that feeds into the performance being really magical. And same thing with us. We're like in the moment, and it's like everything matters. So you're just trying to deliver your very best work. But in order to be able to do that, we spend days setting up everything beforehand to make sure that everything works and everything sounds just right, and everything is balanced just so. And it's just like a process of simplifying everything we do at the studio, so that when they walk in, all they have to do is put on headphones. I get their sound in the headphones, and we go with it, you know.
That's and again, you've brought it all around perfectly to preparation, being prepared, getting set up, and doing all of that that we talked about at the start. So, again, I'm going to have to when I get up tomorrow, I'm going to play this episode and just be taking notes, because I think I'm going to get a page full of notes from both of you, less from Mike, more from Lidge, but I'm going to get a page full of notes about all of the great tips that we've had here today. So
good deal.
That is awesome. I'm going to give wrong way.
High fives, guys. High fives.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. I'm going to give Mike one last chance to give some closing thoughts, and then, of course, we'll let our guest
go, Mike. Go, Mike. Go,
okay, Mike. Final word. My
final word is everybody watch the replay of this show and see how many of these tips you can apply to your love life. That's my final word. If you can't quite get there, have a 20-minute break and then drive it home.
That's disturbing. We'll leave it at that. Lidge, what are your closing thoughts on this, on getting the best performance out of you and out of others in the studio?
Just remember that this is all based on fun. Everything we're doing here is because at the very beginning of this, you just simply picked up your first instrument, sang a song, played with friends, got up on a stage and felt the energy and the excitement. And that's what fuels everything about this. This is why we're all here talking about it. It's why you're here listening. It's why we stress out sometimes. And if you can remember that, then you can always just look for every opportunity to just get back to that. Always go back to the simplest, most fun aspect of this, and you're going to get the most out of it. Whatever you record is a communication from one human to another. And it's the essence of that is the emotion that's in there. And so if it's a happy, fun song, remember that the more happy and fun that comes through, the more likely you are to love this recording of it afterwards. And as Mike said, the performance trumps everything. And if it's an emotional, sad song, the more likely you are to, the more you can get that emotion to come through and don't let the other stuff get in the way. Or distract you, the more likely you're going to think it's a brilliant, wonderful song.
Love it. I think that's a perfect thing to go out on. So we are going to finish up there. We're only at twice the length that we usually go for. So I think there's a whole bunch of content in there. On behalf of that guy, Mike, there, you can check out his channel down in the description. Now, Lij Shaw, I want to say a massive thank you to you for taking the time out to chat with us here today.
Yeah, my pleasure, man.
jump down in the description. There's a link to Lidge's channel here on YouTube. You can also go to recordingstudiorockstars.com or RS Rockstars if you can't get all those letters into your browser at once. Check out the podcast. They're 210 episodes strong, including one with me, which I was honored to be on last year or this year. So yeah, check out the podcast, check out the channel, and go over to the website of Recording Studio Rockstars. On behalf of that guy over there and the Brady Bunch crew that we've got here going on here, thank you all for being here. If you got some value out of this, hit like, subscribe to all of the channels linked down below. And thank you, everyone, for your kind support and encouragement here tonight. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Thank you.